Well, here it is, the very first episode of Road Noise without the sound of the road under my voice. It won't be the last time, but it's not going to be the norm. There's a reason for that, and I'll tell you all about it in this episode, How to Battle Normal Depression and Anxiety, Non-Clinical, in episode number 44 of Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time. Hello and welcome again to another episode of Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time. I'm your host, Michael Blackston, and I don't want to call it a special episode, but I guess it's kind of special. It's the very first time that I've done this show without the noise of the road under the sound of my voice. And so it's still road noise. There's just no road noise. There might be some other stuff, though, because I'm sitting in a hotel room, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm kind of in a bad mood. I was in a bad mood all day long. And there really wasn't any reason for it. It was just a gloomy day. There was a lot of rain. There were thunderstorms, and that was very nice at the time. But the job that I was doing was tedious, and I had just gotten hot and tired. There's so much that's been going on in my life in the past week. I'll tell you a little bit about that after we talk about the topic. But I was in a bad mood, and I realized that it was one of those days where just everything seemed awful, and I felt like just curling up into a ball and into a fetal position and just crying mommy. You know, it's just one of those days, and I think that everybody has them, and it doesn't mean that you have clinical depression. You may have listened to my episode on clinical depression, and if you haven't, then look back in the episode list, and you'll find that. I'm not sure exactly what episode that was, but you'll find that, and I know a good deal about clinical depression, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those days that are non-clinical, when you're just having a bad day, but you're depressed, and you've got this doom and gloom and these gray clouds seeming like they're hovering over you, and you just can't get out of it. What do you do? How do you make the day better while you're waiting for a better day to come along? And the reason that I said you may hear some other stuff, and it's another thing that's kind of gotten under my skin, and it just happened a few minutes ago as I was getting set up to do this episode. I realized that I was going to need to do it in the hotel room and not in the car. So I have in my bag of tricks, my podcast bag, if you will, the black bag I keep that's got all of my wires and all of my gear except for my computer. It's just got the microphone and my pop filters and all sorts of different wiring and all kinds of things like that I might need in a sound setup. And I keep a desk microphone stand, just a small desktop microphone stand that I can take apart and take with me very easily, kind of in an emergency if something happens and I don't have my boom microphone stand with me. If I'm doing a podcast where I'm stationary and I'm not in the car holding the microphone. And I wanted to use that. I'd gotten all geared up to use that and to set that on the table and to have my pop filter set up here instead of this little helmet filter foam thing I keep on the microphone here. It really doesn't make any difference. But it was just the way I had gotten everything in my mind set up. And when I started setting all of this up and I looked into the bag, the actual stand was not there. The base of it was, the heavy metal base that you screw the stand into was there, and the little microphone head thing that you screw on top of that holds the microphone is there. But the silver piece, the actual stand part of it, is not there, and I don't know where it went. I don't remember ever taking it out of the bag. I don't remember anything, but I searched furiously in this bag for it and could not find it. And I wanted to throw something because I'm the kind of person that once I get started with something, once I have a plan, I don't like that plan to change, and it will absolutely ruin my day. So it was just one more wrench thrown in the cogs of my day here at the end of the day. As I record this, I'm in Eastern Time. I'm on not the coast, but kind of toward the coast. I'm in right outside of Columbia, South Carolina, in Winsboro, South Carolina, and it's 11:31 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's not very far from the time I need to release this podcast. It's a Thursday night, and it's been a hard week. It's been a hard day, and I just realized that if I was going to get something out, I was going to have to sit down and do it. I didn't have time to get it done in the car. I don't know how, but my car has gotten overstuffed with just crap and junk. And I was thinking about my day today, and I said, that's that's the episode. That's what I've got to talk about. So I sat down and I wrote out some notes and some things I want to talk about today. So we've all had those. There's one of the sounds that I talked about you might hear. I don't know if you heard my chair as I backed up. I kind of swivel back and forth when I sit in a chair, and that can create some residual noise. So hopefully there won't be too much of that. Everybody has bad days. I talked about that earlier when it's just when everything seems to go wrong all at once. We all have them. It doesn't mean you're clinically depressed, but everybody's got them. I mean, it could be anything. It could just be, you may have started out the day with a flat tire. You may have stumped your toe getting out of bed. If you're like me and you weigh yourself every morning, the scale might not have read the way you wanted it to this morning, and it puts you in a bad mood. Sometimes bad news follows more bad news, and that's followed by more bad news. Anything. It can be any number of things. It will create this pall over you, this cloud that just seems to not want to go away, and you feel depressed. That's really the best word for it. You're just depressed. It's doom and gloom. Everything just seems like it's falling apart and you just want to cry. How do you change, or at least lessen, the negative vibes and that bad mojo you're feeling? There are ways you can do it, but how? Well, the truth is many times it's just going to have to pass. A lot of times the sun's just going to have to dawn a new day. But there are things you can do inside of the dreary day. Even knowing that it's going to be dreary, there are things you can do inside of them. Steps you can take to try and add maybe just a little bit of a silver lining to the gloom. First step is always recognizing that it's just a bad day and it will pass. Again, we all have them. They pop up every now and again like weeds sometimes. You pluck it, you go on. It's just a bad day, and it will pass. So get your head around that fact that it's not the norm, and tomorrow can be better. By the way, if it is the norm, if you realize that this is happening to you quite a lot, then you need to take my advice and see a professional about it, because there may be a clinical issue you can be resolving. It could change your life for the better, and you didn't even realize you had an issue. So if you're finding that this is happening a lot, then maybe you need to see a counselor or some sort of professional about that and see if we can't figure out if there's an underlying reason for you having these depressing times a lot. So what can you do while you wait for the next sunrise and all the loveliness it's going to bring? Well, you need to get your mind off the negative stuff. That's what you have to do. You got to figure out a way to get your mind off of it, because if you're like me and you're having a depressive sort of day, you just revel in it. It's like spinning your wheels in the mud, and the mud's flying and just covering you, and you just feel like you're bogged down. You need to get your mind off of that bad situation, because when you kind of revel and wallow in the negativity, it only makes it worse. So there are some things you can do, and I've made a list of about 7 of them, and I'm going to make sure that I get to the right one here. My computer wanted to jump here when I arrowed down to it, but you could do one of these 7 things. First, you could talk to somebody about it. That's a big deal if you can get it off your chest. Now, this could be a spouse, a close friend, or a relative who's a good listener. It's a huge help when you're feeling just kind of blah. Now, I'm going to emphasize that it does need to be somebody who is a good listener, not somebody who's going to shake their head, go, and now let me tell you about myself. In these days, it needs to be about you. It needs to be you getting it off your chest and into the air, where all that negative juju can just dissipate in the air. So find somebody to talk to about it. Somebody you can just say, look, I'm having a bad day, and can I bend your ear a little bit and just kind of get it out there so it's kind of off my plate and into the garbage? Most of us have somebody like that we can listen to, and that is a gold mine when you're having a day like this. You could also take the rest of the day off and do something you like if that's possible. It may not be possible for you. Now, I run my own company, and I do have that option. And 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years, I've found it necessary to call it a day kind of early. There have been a couple of times where I called the day off because I just knew I was going to be good for nothing, and I didn't need to be etching what I was going to be etching, and I was able to reschedule. And I had the flexibility at those times to do that. But there have been a couple of times where I just kind of took off early and told the people I was working for, I'll be back tomorrow, I'll get this finished, but not feeling well, I'm going to just take off today. I'm my own boss, I can do that, but that may not be your option, or you may not have that option. But it is something that you can do if you've got to be around some people later after work. Maybe you could send an email and say, look, I'm not feeling well, I kind of need some alone time, or at least I really kind of want some quiet time, and I'm letting you know that I'm kind of feeling bad if you can kind of help me with that. maybe that's the way you need to do it. You know how your day works and how your situation is and how you could do that. But just taking some time off and doing something you like will really help. One of my favorite things to do, in fact, one of the reasons I'm doing this so late is because I did this earlier this evening. I love to go to a movie. It gets lonely in these hotel rooms. I'll come to the hotel room and it's just me and the TV and whatever I'm going to be doing. And lately I've been doing a lot of artwork while I'm sitting here watching TV, but it really didn't feel like it today. I wasn't in the mood. I was in a bad mood. And what I'll do is I'll go see a movie. There's usually something out that I want to see that my wife is not really interested in. Tonight it was Suicide Squad. She just really wasn't quite interested in it. And I called her after the movie was over and said, okay, you're going to have to see this. I thought it was a really good movie, and I wasn't expecting it to be. I thought it was just going to be one of those guy movies, blowing up stuff and be kind of stupid and may even be kind of bad, but I actually turned out, to me at least, that it was, to me, the best DC movie I've seen in a while. But I was able to sit there in a dark theater with a good story, a huge bucket of butter-slathered popcorn, and a soda the size of a water tower, and it helped take my mind off of the boring hotel room. So find something you do like to do and take some time off and do it. It can be with somebody else, but just treat yourself to something. Give yourself something to look forward to during the day. If you feel like you're having that blah kind of time, give yourself something to look forward to. Next, you could listen to a positive podcast. This is something that is relatively new because podcasts are still relatively new, really, when you think about it. In the last 10 years, they picked up steam, but now anybody can have them. They're even putting podcast options in car satellite radio systems now, just standard in cars now as they build them. There's podcast apps there where you can just find what you want. There are a lot of inspiring podcasts out there, and not only that, there are a lot of them that you can kind of mold and niche down until you find one that supports your particular interests, and that can get your mind off of something. It can just get you kind of into another realm where somebody else is talking, and you can kind of get your mind off of that negative stuff. So possibly a podcast. I know a really good one about life, this guy that rides in his car and lives life 1 mile at a time. Never mind. I'm not gonna push. If you're listening to the podcast, you've already found that podcast. You could write somebody an inspiring letter. Now, this is kind of old school, but it's something that I have found that is very inspiring to other people and to myself in a good way to get myself in a good mood when I've been in a bad mood. Write somebody a letter. It can be an email. That's fine. I like to sit down and write them the old-fashioned way on a piece of paper and mail it to them because it's just something about getting that letter in the mail from a friend that means something to you. You can hold it and read it. And it's, to me, that's just kind of Victorian. You know, I imagine the old Victorian ladies who would sit down and write to their cousins and aunts and uncles all over the place. And I don't know why that vision came to my mind, but it did. Anyway, I like to write an inspiring letter. I found that when I'm really down, I can sit down and do that and write something that's encouraging to somebody I know who's having a difficult time. I can tell them that I'm thinking about them, that I'm praying for them, how I'm always there for them, and how I'm sure things are going to get better. Before you know it, not only have you created correspondence that might meet a great need in somebody's life, but you've also lifted your own self up through your encouraging words. You don't realize you're doing it. You're encouraging someone else, but not only are you telling them things are going to get better, you're telling them you're going to pray for them, but you've got this elation of knowing you're helping someone else out, and with the words you're saying, those are actually encouraging to you. And so when you see yourself writing them down, it really helps. And there is something that to make the case for actually writing it on paper, there's something magical that happens in your brain when you actually take your hand and a pen and a piece of paper and write something down. It's something magical that happens. It tattoos in your mind somehow. To me, it's more tangible than an email. And if it fits your life, another one you can do, pray. As a Christian, one of the most rewarding things I can ever do is spend personal time with God. I read my Bible, and I should do that every day, I know, but that really helps when I'm feeling down. I can read my Bible and feel better, but especially when I pray. When I'm talking to God, I find my spirit healing. I mean, many times moving from a mood of sorrow to a mood of rejoicing. By the time I'm done praying, I'm praising God and I'm happy and there's a smile on my face. I will sometimes at the end of prayer find myself singing songs to Him and finding happy tears of joy. And then I realize, what happened? There's no depression anymore. I've got God. I'm talking to God. I'm talking to the Creator. For me, someone who believes that wholeheartedly, that is a wonderful mood changer and a great way to encourage yourself. So if you're a prayer warrior, you're feeling down, that's really, to me, the first place you need to go. Go to God. You could read a good book. I just finished a book called Dear John by Nicholas Sparks. If you're a lady and you like to read, you may have already read that one. And now I will tell you, I got angry during that one. And I got upset, and I felt for him. It's the first time I'd read anything by Nicholas Sparks, and I really didn't think I would be a fan, but now I'm planning to read everything the man has written. I really like the way he wrote it, and I won't go into why I chose to find a Nicholas Sparks book. I actually had a strategy behind why I decided to read something by him, and I may talk about that in a later episode because there was believe it or not, a business strategy involved with it, but I got completely enthralled with that book. Now, not because I was depressed, but it would have helped me out if I wasn't, if I was, because to me, he's a great writer, and it was another world. You're taking yourself out of the world around you that stinks and into a fantasy world where you can witness wonderful things, amazing happenings. If you're into fantasy, that genre, magical things can happen. It doesn't matter. It's a different world, and it's taking you out of yours and into another. Even if it's not necessarily an uplifting tale, at least it's somebody else's problems, and yours are tucked away neatly for a time in the back of your head. And lastly, you could take a nap. It may be as simple as you need a nap. Believe it or not. Now, I have a hard time in the afternoons taking a nap because I get a headache. But most of the time it's because I find myself, when I'm taking a nap and getting a headache, I'll find myself napping somewhere where it's not really conducive to it. But get yourself in a comfortable place, somewhere cool if it's hot outside, somewhere warm if it's cold outside. Settle in and take yourself a nap for an hour or two. You might just need a good rest. It may be as simple as that. I'm sure there are lists upon lists and things I could add to this list of things you could do to get your mind off of things and to get yourself in a better mood and handle when you're having those days of depression. No, they're not fun. Nobody likes that stuff. I hate it because I'm a positive-minded person. I can't stand negativity. And so when I'm having those days when I'm feeling that negative, it just gnaws on me and it makes it worse. So the point is to take yourself out of the stuff that's got you down. Now, I'm not telling you to ignore your problems. I know you're going to have problems. Everybody's got problems. It's something we all have to deal with. But you can face your problems better if you have a positive outlook. Think about this visual. The soldier who is going into battle is going to do much better if he has his chin up and looking forward than if he has his head down, looking at the ground and stumbling around. He's going to be stronger for the fight, and life is a fight. You can win it, but I tell you, it's best to have a positive attitude. And so if you find yourself having those down days, you're going to have them. Don't fret over it. Just say, I'm having one of those days. Let me find a way to pick myself up. Those are just some of the ways you can do it. And if you think of something else, let me know. I'll tell you how to get in touch with me here at the end of the episode. It's been a rough week for me for several reasons. I won't go into it as to why the main one, but last weekend, well, I won't be too specific. I'll tell you enough about it, but last weekend I found out that someone very dear to me has stage 4 melanoma. It has spread throughout their body, and they're positive. They're keeping a positive outlook as far as the stuff they're going to be taking, the immunotherapy treatments. But I spent the entire weekend just about at the hospital. And that was hard, not only because this person is very dear to me, but also because it was about an hour to an hour and a half away from where I live, and I was going back and forth. I'm moving from one house to another. Granted, it's only a couple of doors down. I still had a lot to do. It's hot and humid. We're right in the middle of August now. It's hot and humid. I had layouts and work that I needed to be working on, and just any number of things. You name it, I was having a hard time. But the most egregious thing was over the weekend dealing with that and the emotions that go along with that, and trying to be uplifting to this person in my life. And I am uplifting to them. I'm trying to stay positive and keeping in touch with them, making sure that everything's going all right, that they're feeling well. They're home now. There was an issue, a very difficult and painful issue for them as they were finding out about this. Something happened and they ended up in the hospital. The reason they were in the hospital is because they started bleeding from an adrenal gland, which caused extreme abdominal pain, and until they got that straightened out, they couldn't come home. And so I've been checking up on them as I've been out of town. So it's been one of those emotionally taxing weeks, and I'm going to ask for your prayer for this person in my life. If you're listening to this and you are a prayer warrior, then God knows what the situation is, and as you know, God is the great healer. And we're going to just, there's my wife texting me. I'm going to have to wrap this up here in just a second. Prayer works. And so I'm just going to ask that this person is kept in your prayers as we go along. And then to start off the week, I had to have the stitches removed from the basal cell carcinoma that I had taken off of me a couple of weeks ago. And they took this huge chunk out of my back shoulder and stitched it up, and everything healed well. It's not hurting or anything. It's healed extremely well, and I had to go in Monday for those stitches to be removed. But while I was there, I asked them about a couple of spots on my head. There was one right above my left temple and one almost right in the middle of my forehead, between my eyebrows and my hairline, right kind of in the middle, little tiny thing. And I asked him to look at it, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I think those are both basal cell carcinomas." He said, "I'm going to go ahead while you're here and take those." And so now I'm sitting here looking at myself in a mirror, and I'm looking at two big old spots that have been cut out of my head. Now, they don't look really as bad as I think they do, but I'm a vain person. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm having to wear Band-Aids on them as they heal all day, every day, which isn't comfortable when you start sweating, and I'm not in air-conditioned situations. I'm in these granite sheds, and I'll start sweating, and it's just not comfortable. So that has added, I think, to part of the reason I've been kind of down and in a poor mood. But I went to see a movie tonight, and it put me in a good mood and made me decide. I had already decided I wasn't going to do an episode this week, by the way. But I decided to do an episode. Let's go ahead and do an episode of Road Noise. Let's just do it in the hotel room. See, it lifted my spirits. It put me in the mood to provide you with some good content, and I had something to talk about. So this week's positive review, I'm going to talk about what I mentioned earlier, the works of Nicholas Sparks. If you're not a romance person, I understand. And I'm not a romance person either. And I guess that's one of the reasons I didn't read anything by Nicholas Sparks before. I kind of put it in the realm of maybe one tier above Harlequin. Just that sappy chick flick kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love chick flicks, but I never thought I'd be able to get involved with these everyday situations between couples who doughy-eyed fell in love. Then I read Dear John, and I became so involved with the characters and the situations, and I could not put the book down. And the credit goes to Nicholas Sparks as a writer. He really knows how to involve you in the lives of these people and to make you fall in love. In Dear John, I fell in love with Savannah right along with John. I fell in love with her. I mean, it was absolutely, and I'm a married man, but I mean, I just, through John's eyes and through John's heart, you feel it. And I credit Nicholas Sparks for being such a talented author. And if you're just looking for something good, something that's not too heavy, but that is very emotional and will get you involved with the characters, pick up, like I said, all I've read so far at the time this is recorded was Dear John, and I'm looking for the next one. But pick up something, and don't just go watch the movie. Read the book. It's so much better to read the book. But the works of Nicholas Sparks are going to be my positive review for this week. I need to go ahead and finish up this episode by giving you the ways to get in touch with me. If you want to give me a call, please do. I want to hear from somebody. I think it's because nobody wants to hear their voice on the podcast, and that's okay. You can tell me that you don't really want me to do that, and I won't if you say in it that you don't want to be aired. But if you don't care, I'd love to hear you. It adds such a dimension to the podcast if you do. And here's how you do it. The phone number is 706-408-7456. That's 706-408-7456. Go ahead and give me a call there and leave a message on the voicemail line. I also have a feedback at michaelblackston.com. That's the email address. Feedback at michaelblackston.com. You can also get to me and stream the episodes right from roadnoisepodcast.com. And there are also ways to, like I said, you can share it, but you can also go to the page at iTunes there and leave a ranking and a review. I would love for that kind of action from you. If you feel like doing that, no pressure. I just do appreciate so much that you listen to me. I can't say you're sitting alongside me in the passenger seat in this one. It's the first time, but maybe you are with me. You're with me in spirit. You're keeping me company in this lonely hotel room in Winnsboro, South Carolina, and together we're learning to live life 1 mile at a time. Until episode 45, don't know what we're going to talk about, but I know it'll be a good one. So until then, thank you for joining me. I'm Michael Blackston. This is Road Noise. Bye-bye.